Earlier this week, a high court judge in the United Kingdom ruled that Al Gore's movie Inconvenient Truth promotes partisan political views. The British government sent the film to schools to promote the issue of global warming. The ruling came after one parent filed a lawsuit claiming the film contained serious scientific inaccuracies. Now schools must follow a new guidance that calls for balance when showing the film. Joining us now is the author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Global Warming, and environmentalist Christopher Horner, and the president of the Institute of Ecosystem Studies, William Schlesinger, with us. All right, Chris, first of all, Al Gore's the biggest Class A hypocrite on the planet. We've got video of him just 3 weeks ago getting off one of the least fuel-efficient planes in the sky, his own private Gulfstream. He uses 20 times the amount of electricity as everyone else. He says there's a planetary emergency, walk to work. So that doesn't get shown. But the idea of balance, why would that bother liberals?
Well, first of all, you correctly note that Al Gore was Exhibit A. He proves he doesn't believe what he says. That was an important piece of evidence in what the court decided, which that his movie requires a warning label. If it were food to be fed in the school cafeteria, it would require to be served with an antidote. Yeah. The problem is there's a law that there's no ban involved here. The law that the father sued under for censorship, which was going on, the skeptic side, was being censored. The law under which the father sued demands balance. That was already in place. The guidelines, however, broke it down and were very biased. Anyway, the point is he now has to show balance, or if the schools are voluntarily going to ban Gore's movie if they refuse to show balance because it exists. And Gore's own science advisor, James Hansen, has long acknowledged, now he stepped up his acknowledgement, that Gore's movie is full of errors. It's political.
It is very political. And as we have pointed out on this program, we have named names. All the scientists, all the meteorologists, all the experts, in spite of what they tell us that this is incontrovertible and no longer in dispute, the list is in the thousands. Dispute this. In an educational institution in that kind of environment, that it would be in the students' best interest to have both sides, right? That shouldn't be a problem.
If you'd like universities to admit that the science isn't settled and the court has just acknowledged who is in denial, it's the alarmists, there is another side, Here's what you do. We spend $5 billion of U.S. federal taxpayer dollars alone on climate-related research. Ask the universities, ask the other guests. Are you willing to say the science is settled so I can spend this amount of money, which is more than we send to the National Cancer Institutes every year, somewhere else? The answer is obvious. William, it's not settled. They just want to be taken seriously.
Look, I have a two-part question. Do you think Al Gore, if he's going to lecture us about the planetary emergency in the movie An Inconvenient Truth that says walk to work, ride your bicycle, change your life? 3 weeks ago we got video of him getting off his private jet. As a matter of fact, a 1977 model, one of the least fuel efficient jets in the sky. Do you think he should live by example?
I would prefer that he walk to work.
Is he a hypocrite?
I'm not going to go that far.
This is not about Al Gore, though, Bill. Let's talk about whether this is, as Chris Horner suggested, he said it wasn't established science. Is it established science that there's global warming and that humans have something to do with it?
I think overwhelmingly the scientific community is convinced that the evidence for warming is real, it's solid, and that the chance that this is due to human effects is undeniable.
So why do you think there are people denying it, and why do you think there are people like Chris Horner, your co-guest here, who are very upset about Al Gore and what he's saying and can't seem to accept any of that information?
Well, it would be a wonderful thing to believe that burning fossil fuels had no effect on the planet. But the reality is that we're putting some 6 billion tons of carbon in the atmosphere every year, and our atmosphere can't take any more. The carbon dioxide concentration is rising.
Was Al Gore accurate in his film?
Oh, I think the science in the film was masterful. I'd quibble around the edges a little bit in fields that I work in, but overall, I think it was a masterful attempt to bring the experts together and to produce a film that the public could understand and that presented the issue.
This British court that we were talking about earlier said, well, if there's a political agenda, you've got to have a qualifying statement, which is what the judge rules in England. You've got a political agenda, Chris, in that you were funded. The Competitive Enterprise Institute was funded by Exxon. Exxon has decided not to any longer fund those people who do what you do. And you've had a number of other companies like Shell, General Motors, Amoco, and others who have a vested interest in your outcome fund your work. So certainly there's political interest in what you do, and that's where the money came from.
Well, if you're trying to intimate because you know better than to say it, no, obviously we don't do work for hire. However, you're not getting into why Enron started this, why BP and other companies are pushing strongly the alarmist agenda, and they're working very closely. And that's because this is the world's second oldest profession, trying to make a fortune off of governmental policy favors for things you wouldn't make a fortune off of in the marketplace. But if I can get back to what you guys are mischaracterizing, the court didn't address the question, has there been some warming and does man have something to do with it? The court addressed the question, is that what Gore's movie said, and is what he said sound science or is it political? They said it's political. Remember, it now is required to carry a warning label after 3 days of hearings. You can say, oh, I'd quibble with it, but it was masterful.
Right.
The fact is, after 3 days of testimony, evidence given, the court has decided this is political. Compare it to other, Martin Durkin's movie. He made mistakes. He's corrected them. Gore told flat-out lies.
It's political, and
Martin Durkin used scientists. Gore was a politician talking about his agenda.
it's political, one-sided propaganda. Thank you. Appreciate you for being with us. And coming up, our good friend Deborah Norville will join us and tell us why a